Well, let's talk about Sun International now. It owns Grand West Casino, Sun City, and Sun Dreams in Chile.
Right, so that's the combination of the business that they
They merged
there.
basically in Latin America with Dreams.
Dreams, which was a similar sized business which had casinos up and down Chile, and they put their own thing in Santiago in there. And the big excitements were twofold. They were going to buy Piedmont, which owns Empress Palace. That's the deal that fell through and cost them an absolute fortune with a break fee. But then they're also developing the new Menlyn Maine development in the Menlyn area.
Which is, the Menlyn Maine will be complete by the first quarter of 2017. They're on track with that, and it should deliver.
That's the one that's going to have like a Times Square look-alike thing in the middle.
So Graham Stevens very enthusiastic about Menlyn Maine and what that will bring to the table once it's complete. But as you're right, Piedmont, that deal just falling apart. The announcement, I think, came in April that it wasn't going to happen, and a lot of money lost.
In a sense, though, what the 675 million break free was for was to have Empress Palace waive their objection to the moving of the license, which gave them the opportunity to do it. So it's kind of like a fee in order to proceed with the development at all.
Now, there's another issue before we go. Well, so let's give the market cap of I'm sorry. You see, I shouldn't interview the CEOs way before we chat here. 9.2 billion rand. Price to earnings ratio here, it has no price to
Well, I think that's
earnings
probably because
ratio.
of a loss in the preceding period because of that fee.
And dividend yield of 3%.
You know, this Menlyn Maine thing, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, that's basically the old Marula Sun that used to be on the other side of Pretoria.
The Marula Sun, DTI, the Department of Trade and Industry, is now looking to issue another casino license in South Africa. Now remember, for an investor, you've got a very level playing field. You know that there are 40 casino licenses out there in South Africa. DTI is now looking to issue an additional one because of the change with Marula Sun,
Where
etc.
would that be? Somewhere in the Gauteng area?
So in the Gauteng area, and that, Graham Stevens is very unhappy about this, I have to say. He just reckons that you cannot go and change the rules of the game
Specifically
midway.
having paid the 600+ million to kind of get that exclusive right.
Exactly. But the gaming body that represents all of these players, including Marcel van Oorlog, they are up in arms and are basically going to fight this.
It's interesting, Bonner, because, you know, I think experience tells you that, in fact, that the regionalization, for want of a better expression, of gaming means that people tend to go to their local area, and they tend not to stray from that. So you're not going to find, even if you put more competition up, it's, oh yes, in very broad terms, yes, it might take away from other areas, but it's not necessarily going to cannibalize immediately within that area.
So you don't think that there's an issue here?
I think there may be an issue, but it may be marginal.
Don't you think it's a bigger problem that if the regulatory environment, so, you know, if you can't stay at the cap, the so-called cap at 40, and yes, you add 1, but what if you go and add another 2 or 3 or 4? Doesn't that create uncertainty that investors will not like?
Definitely, absolutely.
Particularly given the fact that gambling profits and margins are restricted. So in a way, it's sort of like the quid pro quo. Because people who live in Centurion right now, for example, are coming to Monte Casino, but in future they may stay home and go to Menlyn Maine. So you can see that it's a tricky market.
Anyway, so that is a Sun International very...
Share price.
Yes.
Because remember, we've been hanging into this thing, and in previous shows where it's been trading at 70, we decided to hang on to it. Now it's rebounded to 86.
But remember that it also went all the way to 140, and those are the shareholders that are sitting around saying, hang on a minute,
I think we bought
now
ours on the way down. So we bought ours, I think, above 100 Rand is this share, but not on the prior shelf. So there you go.
So what are your thoughts on this one, Chris?
I'm not so wild about this one, and one of the things I don't like about them is their move out of Africa. I mean, they used to own Royal Livingston on the Victoria Falls, and the Zambezi Sun has been flogged all of that. They can't get rid of, because of lease agreements, they can't get rid of
And they've seriously got a problem in Nigeria with their operation there, where there's infighting with their partners. Yeah. It sounds like an absolute mess up there.
So Africa doesn't sound like a good situation for them. It's a great pity, because I would have thought that would have been a good thing conceptually, at least in the longer term. So I'm not wild about this one.
But what about the bulk that they now have in Latin America?
Latin America has been good for them. Yes, I agree. No, Latin America has been good. But, you know, compared with Sogo Sun, in my own humble opinion, has got a far better hotel operation than Sun International. So Sun International is hardcore gaming. And at least with Sogo Sun, that kind of cushions the blow in these kind of relatively low growth times.
So what Graham Stevens is also very clear about is that he said to the market that it'll take us 3.5 to 5 years to deliver the value that we are now deploying, as in Menlyn Maine, etc., etc. And he's saying you need to be a bit more patient.
And we haven't even mentioned the fact that SunWest, which is the casino in the Cape Metropole, remains a very strong and very profitable business. And the deal that they've recently done in that market to bring Tshwane in as a minority shareholder has lessened the pressure for an additional license in the Western Cape. So we can only hope that that deal remains in force. Remember, there's a regional aspect to this because they're provincial
You're talking
operations.
about the PE operation?
No, I'm talking about Western Cape. So in Cape Town, it would be a huge blow for Sun International if the Western Cape administration were to decide to give another license, as you're talking about potentially happening in Gauteng. Anyway, I think Graham Stevens is exactly right. It is going to take a long time, and it's going to take longer than expected. And in part, it's because of some of the setbacks that they've had in the immediate rollout, for example, of the Empress Palace.
Yeah, and he's just waiting to be able to demonstrate the revenue that comes through from operations like Menlyn Maine. Are you going hot or not on this one?
You know, I'm going to stay hot because I think it's too cheap relative to its perceptions and the fact that people have gotten a bit bearish on it. But I will concede that it's potentially going to be a long wait before we get back to that 140
so
rand
you're
price.
Going hot?
Yeah.
Hot or not?
Not hot, and in fact I'd go so far as to say I'd rather short Sun to National and go long on Sogo Sun.
Brave, brave word.